Thank you guys again for joining. Today we're going to be going over Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations and the mobile capabilities within the application. I've been fighting through. I've got a little Android emulator that I installed on my computer that's being a little bit slow, but I'm hoping we're going to be able to go through and show some of the concepts here, as I prefer to kind of go through demonstrations as opposed to sitting in slides and doing screenshots. I think it's just beneficial for you guys to kind of understand what the capabilities are of the application in real time. So as we show this, obviously just bear with me as we go through it. So kind of the portion of topics that we want to cover today are obviously going through and talking about the web client, the mobile applications that we have, and what are the other mobility tools that we have to be able to drive this mobile experience that we have within Dynamics 365. Most of you probably already know when Satya took over at the helm of Microsoft as CEO, one of the very first statements he made was that mobile first type aspect, cloud first, mobile first, is one of the initiatives that Microsoft was moving forward with their product stack, and mainly focusing around that aspect is basically the fact that mobility is becoming more commonplace in our daily lives. I use my phone now more than any other device. As I'm walking around, as I'm at a restaurant, it's kind of become an antisocial aspect in some ways. But at the same point, the information that you're trying to get out of this mobile device and the social connections that you're making are actually really relevant. And there's a whole generation of people that are growing up that use phones to a much larger degree than I do and need that information really quickly and easily. So obviously, designing a system that then works with mobility is a very important aspect that needs to be covered and understood. So what I want to do is I want to talk about the web client capabilities, and we can go into an emulated version and see that information. I also want to talk about then, like I said, those mobile applications. So that way you can kind of understand that you can use the web client obviously for mobility if you want to, but at the same point there are mobile apps that you can drive as well for that. And then lastly, any of the other mobility tools that are out there, what do you guys have access to be able to extend the solution to go even further than that as part of that implementation of the actual product. So with that, let's talk about the web client a little bit. So the web client is the native Dynamics 365 finance and operations experience. We call it FinOps for short in our organization. Some call it F&O, but the net result is that it means the same thing. When you log into finance and operations, you're logging in through this web client to be able to then experience that rich UI experience that Microsoft has developed for the product. Obviously, it's got a modern browser enablement, meaning that if you're running on Safari or Chrome or Firefox or even Edge for that matter, that you should be able to connect very easily and then have that scale and have that form factor adjust based off of the resolution of your screen. And that's where that UI scaling based on the device type really becomes relevant nowadays, where you're designing things so that they work on a tablet, and then they also work on a phone, and then they also work in a desktop environment, because that's kind of the device endpoints that people need to be able to use these mobile capabilities. And it's not just phones, it's also things like warehouse scanners. So those symbol devices that you use, being able to target different types of devices allows you to then implement technology to really be more efficient within your business processes. And then lastly, obviously the web client, they're continually improving this for the mobility enabled solutions. Case in point with that, I'm going to be showing a 10.1 version of Dynamics 365. The version I've done demos with in the past was the 7.0 version, and when I opened it on the phone, it really did not look good. It didn't have that presence or that ease of use that made it just a lot tougher then to interact with it. But as Microsoft has progressed down this road in transitioning the classical AX environment with those old pages to this new modern interface, it's become easier and more fluid and easier to use as part of that mobility transition. And so if you wanted to, technically you could use the web client for all of this capability inside of our environment. So let's go through and just do a quick demonstration of that capability. So first and foremost, here I have an actual finance and operations instance that's up and running. And you can see it's a browser type environment that I have exposed at this point. You've probably seen this in other demonstrations. And so as you can see here, as I scroll down, I can go, for example, to my sales order processing and inquiry. And I've got my tiles and I've got my lists of orders and also my links and all the additional information related to that. So this is obviously the desktop experience that you have when you're interacting with Dynamics 365. But at the same point, what we can also do is we can use an emulator to actually show what a phone would look like for this same interface, where we would basically just go through and then access this same environment, but then through Chrome that's actually installed on this particular device. So what I'm doing here is I'm just quickly scrolling over to find my application, and here you can see it's Chrome on an Android device. And this is going to be a little bit slower because it's emulated. I don't have a screen share of my actual phone, so to speak, but you can see here as I go through and then access this specific one for this phone, for example, that I have my interface that's very similar to what my finance and operations interface was from a mobility perspective now. So I've opened up Chrome, I'm interacting with it. I can scroll up and down to see all my different workspaces that I have. I can access my additional information by clicking over here to actually then get into my module access if I wanted to, or to look up different interfaces or different workspaces that I have. I can do search to find functional areas. And let's go down and take a look at, for example, that sales order processing and inquiry screen to see kind of what that looks like as we scroll down in here. So you see my mouse moving. I'm basically just replicating exactly what would happen from an actual finger point of view. And I could actually just use my finger if I wanted to, which I'm doing right now as I scroll through this. And so for touch-wise, based off of the actual interface that we're integrating with, we can see and change and interact with it very easily. So what I did right there is I just clicked on the actual sales order processing and inquiry screen, and you can see that it actually goes through and shows those tiles. I can hide my keyboard because I'm not going to actually filter on a specific salesperson or employee, and you can see my unconfirmed orders, my delivery date, my confirmed information. Basically everything that's available on the actual rich desktop experience is also available on the phone. And I can scale into this, I can drill into it, I can go to the list, and I can interact with it from a browser that's installed on my phone. I can also extend this then beyond the phone. I can do this in a tablet or any other device that's out there as well as part of that processing. So I just wanted to bring that front and center here, is that, you know, in terms of mobility, technology allows us now to access this information very easily and quickly from within a browser experience on a phone or a tablet. And that's a pretty major thing that we've seen a shift in, and it obviously opens up a lot of doors for you to be able to then experience the finance and operations capabilities on different devices. The other aspect here I wanted to talk about was the mobile application perspective. So within Dynamics 365, you can also set up very targeted applications that are specific then to a business process or to a use case. So here's my mobile applications that are kind of out of the box, where I've got like a My Team workspace, I've got a cost control workspace, or I've got an inventory on hand experience. And those can actually be set up inside of here. If I go back into my main environment here, if we go through and then go out of this workspace and I click on my settings over here, you can see that I have these mobile applications that I can interact with then. So inside of these, for example, if we take a look at some of that information, we can see, for example, there's an inventory on hand inquiry that you can do. And you can actually then customize these by just going through and creating new ones, or even importing or creating your own that then lists different information from a mobile app perspective. When you then log into, for example, the Play Store, these mobile apps can then be published to that particular user so that you can actually go through and then interact with it. Now on this one, I think it's going to be too slow to show that information, but if I click on my actual application over here, and I just want to go and show the Play Store just to show you kind of what that is. So I can click on my Play Store, for example, and then from within here on the Play Store, I can actually go to the finance and operations area to download that that application and then install it on my actual device. So it's something that I can use then to integrate or use additional information that's more targeted then towards my capabilities or requirements that you may have from a mobile device perspective. So there's a couple of different applications that are exposed here that you can access, and I just wanted to show just really quickly what that kind of looks like. If I go back over here, we're going to do the Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and you can see then that there's actually a couple of different mobile apps that you can use as well with this. So there's a warehousing app. So if you're using the advanced warehouse capabilities along with the transportation management capabilities, you can install this on your Symbol devices if they run Android. There's also that unified operations aspect right here, mobile app, that you can also use that then provides that experience in terms of being able to have a very targeted mobile app that you design that then shows lists and information that drives some of that information. So Microsoft is really investing, obviously, in these mobile app experiences. So therefore, then you can use different devices to be able to drive that information. So something to note is that we do have the capability then to run that as well. So the other aspects as well that I wanted to cover just at a high level, just to let you know what do we have the capability of doing, are some of the other mobility tools that are out there that we see our clients using to really drive then those integration topics. And those are three primary areas that we see for the mobility tool aspect. The first and foremost, obviously, is Power Apps. If you haven't heard of Power Apps, you should really look into it. It's designed as an end-user tool so that subject matter experts can create applications that basically take the information from within Dynamics 365 and then expose it on an actual device. So more of if you wanted to make a customer inquiry list, you could make a Power App that you then install on your phone or tablet, and then it looks at the Dynamics 365 data. The other aspect that's important of this, though, that I want to just highlight is that Power Apps is something that you can use beyond that too. So if you go, for example, into one of your actual workspaces, you can actually go through and then add Power Apps now into the different lists or different areas of our applications that then allow for you to have additional information that you can display. So if I move this wonderful thing out of the way, we're going to close this out of the way. You can see here I can insert a Power App even in this environment. So within the actual web client, I can have apps that I use to extend the application, and then those apps can also be used from a mobility perspective as well. The other aspect that's important with this, obviously, is custom applications. So if you're used to being able to develop in any of the development environments like Xamarin, or even some of the extended WCF capabilities, you can create those custom applications that consume that data to create mobile application experiences. And then lastly, there are a bunch of third-party solutions that even enhance the mobility aspects even more. So maybe you don't want to implement the advanced warehouse capabilities, but you want to use something for the actual warehouse scanning. There are a couple of different applications that are out there that you can add as an extension that then provide that mobility experience for your warehouse workers. RF Smart is an example of that we've teamed up with in the past to kind of drive that type of information. So it's just something to know, and I wanted to cover it here today and open up the floor for questions. But basically, in terms of mobility, as you can see, even within a phone, I'm able to go through and access the same information that I can from the actual rich text or rich client experience.